About a year ago, I started a new video segment called Gaming Mysteries. It would be a segment in which I talked about unreleased games, beta versions of games, as well as some other gaming mysteries. And I started it all off with Zelda 64, the early beta version of my favorite game of all time, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Now, seeing as how almost an entire year has passed since that first episode, and since I have tweaked the segment a bit, I thought I would redo this, as well as the follow-up video to this about Ura Zelda, but go far more in depth than I had originally gone. So today on Gaming Mysteries, I'll be talking about the Zelda 64 beta. Now, the first time a 3D Zelda game of any kind was shown was during a 1995 tech demo. It showed an older style of Link fighting some shiny fellow. The later versions of the game that were shown looked nothing like this. They of course changed Link's character design and improved the visuals, but it is nice to see where it all got started. Now, when Zelda 64 was initially conceived, it was originally meant to take full use of the features that would be present in the 64 disk drive, such as its internal clock, internet connection, and image editing. The game was presented to Nintendo as a very complex title, and it certainly was. Within the game, Hyrule would be a persistent world that could be changed at the player's will, and those changes made by the player would be saved in the world. The player would have an option of doing things like cutting down any tree, breaking any container, or even leaving footmarks in the sand, and that's only scratching the surface. Those changes, however, would remain in the world forever, or at least until the player's adventure would be through. The game was very ambitious, to say the least, and these features within the game would have offered a completely different experience for the player. Now, as many of you know, because I keep mentioning it, the 64 disk drive wasn't well received by developers, not to mention that the thing was postponed so often that honestly, Nintendo started to lose faith in this project. It was then that Nintendo decided that the best thing to do would be to cancel the 64 disk drive version of the game and redevelop it for a cartridge release. Now, the removal of the 64 disk drive removed a lot of features within the game. In fact, if you look at the beta footage, and I hope to God you are because I've been showing it, but if you look at it and compare it to the final game, they look nothing alike. Similar, yes, but they could pass as completely different Zelda games. To start, Link looks slightly different. He has a similar character design to his final counterpart, but he does look noticeably different. Link's sword swings are noticeably different as well. They seem to have a more fluid motion to them, something we wouldn't see until later Zelda games. As some early photos will show, the game was originally going to have fully 3D towns. This was very different from the final product, seeing as how some towns were essentially just 2D cutouts with 3D character models in them. In the beta, you can also see that there's different environments, and Link can jump, at least from what I can see he can, and that would have been an interesting addition to say the least. Another interesting thing I noticed was that in one set of gameplay, Link is using a two-handed sword. Could this have been an early version of the big Goron sword? It's hard to say, but that would be my guess. I also think the game looks a bit better. It could just be me, but the characters seem to move more naturally than they did in the final version. But with all that aside, one of the most fascinating things about these early beta trailers and gameplay footage is that in a couple of them, it shows Link actually getting the Triforce in a treasure chest. Now, I find this intriguing because, as many of you know, in the final version of the game, the Triforce was an unobtainable item. Yes, there were a lot of rumors regarding it being in the game, but as far as we all know, it's not in there. And it makes me wonder what role the Triforce would have had in this original version, especially if you were able to physically get the Triforce. Unfortunately, we'll never know. And there you have it, a far more in-depth look at the Zelda 64 beta, or at least more in-depth than I had originally done. I'll be the first to admit that I'm really sad that this didn't come out. The original version of this game held so much potential that it's crazy. It would have been a completely different experience, and there are those who are so dedicated to trying to create that experience that various beta remakes are in development, so if you're interested, by all means check those out. With that said though, I love The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, and even though this original version held so much untapped potential, I still think that the final product that we got was truly an amazing game. This has been Gaming Mysteries. Thanks for watching.